My fiancé dumped me a week before our wedding for someone more stable and stole my $50,000 venue deposit. They thought I'd just disappear. But I bought the building next door, and on their wedding day, I used their own words to give them the reception they deserved. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The betrayal didn't arrive with a scream. It arrived with a whisper. I was sick, not just emotionally, but physically deeply sick. I was curled up on our sofa, buried under a quilt, with a fever that had blurred the edges of the room for 2 days straight. The coffee table was a graveyard of used tissues and half-empty mugs of tea. Our wedding was 9 days away. 9 days. I was supposed to be finalizing floral arrangements and chasing down the last of the RSVPs, but instead, I was mainlining daytime television and cough medicine. Liam let himself into the apartment, but his key in the lock didn't have its usual cheerful jingle. It was a sharp, metallic click that sliced through my fever haze. "Eliza," he called out. His voice was wrong. It was flat, sterile, like a doctor about to deliver bad news. I tried to sit up, but the quilt, a wedding gift we'd already received, was too heavy. "In here," I croaked. "Did you bring the soup?" He appeared in the doorway of the living room. He wasn't holding a bag from the deli. He was holding his briefcase, and he was still wearing his overcoat. He looked impossibly sleek, his hair perfectly combed, his suit perfectly pressed. He looked like a stranger. "We need to talk," he said. My stomach, already sour from the flu, did a painful flip. "Okay, can you sit down? You're looming." He did not sit down. He remained in the doorway, framed like a portrait of a man about to leave. "I can't do this, Eliza." "Can't do what?" I whispered, pulling the quilt tighter. "Can't deal with me being sick. I'm sorry, I know it's bad timing, I just—" "No," he said, cutting me off. The wedding." The words hung in the air, thick and toxic. I stared at him, my brain trying to process the sounds. It felt like I was underwater. "What? What are you talking about, Liam? The caterer is paid. My dress is hanging in the closet." "I'm calling it off," he said. He finally moved, walking over to the window and staring out at the rain-slicked street. He couldn't even look at me. "I've been thinking about it for a long time. This freelance life you have, it's not stable." Stable? The word hit me like a slap. I, an architectural designer with a growing reputation and a 6-figure income, was unstable. He, the financial advisor who I had supported for 2 years while he got his certifications, was the bedrock. Stable? My voice was raw, but not just from the sickness. I just put $50,000 of my own money down for our venue, a non-refundable deposit. That seems pretty stable to me, Liam. "That's just it, Eliza," he said, turning. His eyes were cold, emptied of the man I'd loved for 3 years. "You're always doing, always hustling, always working on the next project. It's erratic. I need someone who is calm, someone who has a future that's predictable." "And you found her, didn't you?" I don't know how I knew. Maybe it was the way he'd been guarding his phone for the past month. Maybe it was the sudden late nights at the office that coincided with my own project deadlines. Liam had the decency to flinch. "Her name is Genevieve, and yes, she's a PR director. It's a solid, steady path, her family." "I don't care about her family," I said, and the force of my own voice surprised me. I pushed myself off the sofa, the quilt pooling at my feet. The room spun, but I didn't care. "A week, Liam. You're telling me this 1 week before I'm supposed to walk down the aisle." "It's better now than in 10 years, he said, shrugging, as if he were discussing a dip in the stock market. "The deposit," I said, my mind seizing on the most tangible AWFUL part of it. "The Grand Oak Estate. That was my savings. That was the bonus from the Bedford project." "Don't worry about the venue," he said, and the casualness of it was the final, devastating blow. "I'll handle it. I'll make the calls." "What does that mean, you'll handle it?" "It means it's done, Eliza. I'm sorry it's messy." He walked to the door, picked up a small duffel bag I hadn't even noticed, and opened the front door. The sound of the rain rushed in. "Liam," I yelled, my voice breaking. "You can't just leave. What about our life? What about us?" He paused, his back to me. "There is no us anymore, Eliza. There's just me and you. And I need to go build a stable life." He closed the door. The click of the deadbolt sliding into place was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I stood there, shivering in my pajamas, the cold air from the hallway washing over me. I finally slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, my head in my hands. He left me there, sick and broken, and I realized the betrayal was a sickness far worse than any flu. The first 48 hours were a blur of canceled vendors and sobbing, disbelieving phone calls to my family and the wedding party. My sister, bless her heart, flew in on the next flight and took over, her voice a crisp, efficient blade cutting through the fog of my grief. She was the one who called the guests. She was the one who packed Liam's remaining things into boxes and had them messengered to his office. I simply existed. I moved from the bed to the sofa and back again. My flu raged, and my heart shattered, and I couldn't tell the difference between the fever dreams and the waking nightmare. The sickness finally broke on the 4th day. I woke up and the room was in sharp focus. The sun was streaming in, and for a horrible, hollow second, I thought, oh good, it will be sunny for the wedding. And then it all came crashing back. The emptiness of the apartment, the stack of returned wedding gifts in the corner, the stinging silence where his laughter should have been. I felt hollowed out, but the grief was finally giving way to a cold, sharp-edged anger. The man I was supposed to pledge my life to had treated me like a bad investment. He had calculated his losses and cut me loose, all while I was too sick to even fight back. And then there was the matter of the deposit, $50,000. I wasn't just going to let that go. I pulled myself to my laptop, my hands still trembling slightly. I needed to call the Grand Oak estate. Liam had said he'd handle it, which I now understood to mean he would do absolutely nothing. I'd have to beg, to plead, to see if I could get even a fraction of my money back. But as I searched for the venue's contact information, an email in my inbox caught my eye. It was from the venue coordinator, sent yesterday. The subject line was, "Wedding itinerary update Liam and Genevieve." My blood turned to ice. I clicked it open. "Hi Liam and Genevieve. So excited to be working with you both. Per our phone call, I've successfully moved your date. We were able to transfer the full deposit and all vendor agreements to your new date in 3 months. So lucky we had that opening. Attached is the updated contract for your review. Please have it signed by the end of the week. See you in September. Best, Margaret." I read it once, twice, 3 times. He didn't just cancel the venue, he kept it. He kept my $50,000 deposit, my carefully selected caterer, my floral design, and simply swapped me out for his new, stable model. He was marrying another woman at the wedding I had designed, paid for with my money. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. It was a heist, a cold, calculated financial gut punch. I picked up my phone. My hands were perfectly steady now. The fever was gone, replaced by something glacial. I dialed his number. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Eliza," his voice was wary. "You're marrying her at the Grand Oak. It wasn't a question." There was a pause. Yes, it made sense. The deposit was non-refundable. It seemed like a waste to just let it go. A waste? I nearly choked on the word. It was my money, Liam, my bonus you're stealing from me. "Don't be dramatic, Eliza," he said, and his tone was so condescending it made my skin crawl. "Consider it a parting gift, an uncoupling fee. I'm building a stable life now. Genevieve understands that. We're moving forward, and frankly, this is just cleaner." Cleaner? I was standing now, pacing the living room. "You stole $50,000 from me. There is nothing clean about this. You send me that money by the end of the day, or I'm calling a lawyer." He laughed. It was a short, sharp, ugly sound. A lawyer? On what grounds? What? Changed my mind. The contract was in my name too. It's our shared asset. It wasn't a shared asset. It came from my bank account. I have the transfer records. Good luck with that, Eliza, he said. It'll be your unstable, freelance income against my word as a financial advisor. Who do you think they'll believe? Just let it go. Move on. It's what adults do. He hung up. I stared at the black screen of my phone. The rage was so pure, so potent, it burned away the last vestiges of my sorrow. He was right about one thing. He was a financial advisor. He understood assets and contracts and loopholes. But he had forgotten one crucial thing. I was an architectural designer. He should have known better than to underestimate an asset. And he had forgotten that I knew everything about the asset he was planning to get married in. Liam and I weren't a whirlwind romance. We were a slow burn, or so ID thought. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, and he'd seemed so. Different from the artists and contractors I usually dated. He was quiet, steady, and ambitious. He wore a suit, he had a 5-year plan, and he talked about a future that felt solid. I, with my chaotic deadlines, my sawdust-covered boots, and my income that swung wildly from project to project, found his predictability comforting. For the first 2 years, I was his biggest cheerleader. He was studying for his Series 7 exam, then his CFP certification, all while working a junior analyst job that he hated. I was the one who paid for our dinners out when his base salary was barely covering his rent. I was the one who bought him the expensive suit for his big interview, the one that landed him the job at the prestigious financial firm. I never minded. We were a team. My successes were his were mine. When I landed the Bedford project, a massive historic renovation, the bonus was substantial. And the first thing I did, I booked the Grand Oak Estate. It was my dream venue. An old 1920s bank building converted into a stunning event space, all marble columns and soaring 30-foot-high gilded ceilings. Liam had found it a little ostentatious, but he'd smiled when he saw my face. "If it makes you happy, Eliza, let's do it," he'd said. So I'd signed the contract and transferred the deposit from my business account. It was my gift to us. Now, that gift was being re-gifted to a stranger. Genevieve, I'd only met her twice, both times at Liam's dull corporate functions. She was everything I wasn't. She was polished to a high-gloss sheen, from her impossibly perfect blonde hair to her tiny, pointed designer shoes. She worked in PR for a luxury hotel chain and spoke in a breathy, affected voice that made everything sound like a press release. The first time we met, she'd zeroed in on me with a saccharine smile, her eyes scanning my perfectly appropriate but not designer dress. "Eliza, so lovely. Liam has told me so much about you." She'd taken a sip of her champagne. "You're in construction, is it?" "Architectural design," I'd corrected her, smiling just as tightly. "I specialize in historic renovations." "Oh, how quaint," she'd breathed. "Is that very steady? I just imagine it must be so hard waiting for the next job. Liam, he needs so much support. His work is so high pressure." I had laughed it off, but the comment had burrowed under my skin. Liam, standing beside her, had just given an awkward chuckle and changed the subject. I saw it now, of course. That had been the opening salvo. She had seen my life, my career, my independence, and labeled it unstable to make her own, steady 9-to-5 seem superior. She wasn't just his new fiancée, she was the co-author of this entire narrative. She had painted me as a liability, so she could present herself as the ultimate blue-chip stock. The more I thought about it, the more I realized Liam hadn't just left me, he'd been poached. He'd been convinced that I, the woman who had funded his ambitions, was dragging him down. And the $50,000, that wasn't a parting gift. That was an acquisition fee. They were building their stable future on a foundation of my stolen money. My sister, Kate, was sitting at my kitchen counter, a laptop open, a murderous look on her face. "Okay," she said. "I've canceled the cake, the band, and the photographer. The photographer is fighting us on the deposit, but I think I can shame him into it." "Leave it," I said, my voice quiet. "What? Eliza, it's $3,000. "Leave the photographer," I said, a strange, cold calm settling over me. And the band, and the cake, tell them. Tell them the date has just been moved. Kate stared at me. Moved? Eliza, honey, what are you talking about? You're not trying to get him back, are you? No, I said. I walked over to my own laptop and opened the file browser. I navigated to a folder labeled Projects Archived, and then to Oak District Reno 2019. I'm not trying to get him back, I said, as I pulled up the original city blueprints for the entire block. I'm just going to give them the wedding reception they deserve. Kate peered at the screen. Eliza, those are blueprints. What are you doing? I zoomed in on the Grand Oak estate, and then I zoomed in on the building right next to it. The empty, abandoned, for sale by owner building that shared a long, common, uninsulated brick wall with the Grand Oak's main reception hall. Liam was so focused on the asset, I said, a slow, sharp smile spreading across my face. He forgot to do his due diligence on the liability. The turning point wasn't a tearful breakdown. It was the click of a mouse. The anger didn't make me want to scream, it made me want to work. This was my wheelhouse. I wasn't a PR director who spun words or a financial advisor who moved numbers. I was a designer. I built things, and I understood how things were built. And I understood, fundamentally, how they could be unbuilt. The building next to the Grand Oak was called the Tanner Building. It had been a textiles warehouse in the 1920s and had sat in probate hell for the last decade, a forgotten, boarded-up eyesore. But I knew it intimately. During my consultation on the historic district's renovation, I had been inside it. I knew its bones. I knew the Grand Oak had been retrofitted with modern plumbing and electrical, but to maintain its historic open-plan ballroom, they had left the original 3-brick-thick common wall between the two buildings completely uninsulated. They had plastered over it, yes, but there was no modern soundproofing, no air gap. It was a structural necessity they couldn't touch. I also knew that the Tanner Building's second floor, a mirror image of the ballroom's layout, had a row of large, arched windows that lined up perfectly with the Grand Oak's reception hall windows, separated only by a 3-foot alleyway. It was an acoustic echo chamber. My flu-induced numbness was gone, replaced by a crystalline, singular focus. The Tanner Building was listed in a quiet, sealed bid auction by the city. The auction closed in 6 days. It was a risk, a massive, insane, terrifying risk. I called my financial manager. I need to liquidate the Blue Sky Fund and about half of my tech stocks, I said, my voice all business. Eliza, that's your what-if money, he said, alarmed. That's your down payment for a house. Is this about the wedding? Are you okay? The wedding is off, I said coolly. I'm making a different investment. Please just have the funds ready. I'll be forming a holding company today. Within 24 hours, Vance Design Holdings, LLC, was a legal entity. I spent the next 2 days drafting a proposal, not a real one, but one that looked real, detailing a plan to convert the Tanner Building into a high-end, multi-use, creative studio space, complete with architectural renderings I whipped up from memory. I submitted my sealed bid, along with my very professional-looking proposal, for just over the minimum ask. My bid was a gamble, using the last of my wedding savings, the money for the dress, the caterer, the honeymoon. A week later, an email landed in my inbox. My LLC was the proud new owner of the Tanner Building. Phase 1 was complete, now for Phase 2. I had just under 3 months until the wedding, part II. I hired a small, discreet construction crew I trusted. The official story: Phase 1 renovations, asbestos abatement, and structural assessment. The crew's real job was much simpler. Under the guise of acoustic testing for my future studios, I had them line the common wall on my side with temporary, high-density acoustic paneling. This wasn't to keep sound out. It was to aim it. Then I made a call to a friend who did sound engineering for rock concert. T.S. Bari, I said, I have a unique acoustic challenge. I need to project sound with extreme precision from one building into another with zero bleedback. Like a targeted audio strike? He asked, intrigued. Exactly, I said, and it needs to be concert-level loud. 2 weeks later, Bari and his team were in my dark, dusty warehouse, mounting a series of directional line array speakers onto custom-built steel brackets, aimed directly at the thin, plaster-and brick common wall. We ran tests. We played classical music, and Bari stood in the alleyway with a sound meter. "Holy cow, Eliza," he yelled over the violins. "You can't hear a thing out here, but the wall itself is vibrating like a drum. Whatever's on the other side of that, they're gonna feel it in their teeth." The trap was built. Now I needed the ammunition. This was the easiest and most painful part of the plan. I opened my cloud storage, my digital vault of the last 3 years, and I found the voicemails. My phone, perpetually low on storage, automatically backed them all up. I had hundreds. I spent an entire night listening to them, the ghost of the man I loved filling my empty apartment. There was the one from 6 months ago, after I'd landed the Bedford project. "Babe, I know my parents give you a hard time about your job, but you're the most brilliant woman I know. That bonus you got, using it for the deposit, that's, I love you." And the one from the day I officially booked the Grand Oak. "Eliza, you're amazing, you did it. You got the Grand Oak. Thank you for paying for it, my love. This is our dream, and you made it happen. I can't wait to marry you there." My finger hovered over the delete button. The grief was still there, a dull ache behind my ribs, but the cold, hard anger was stronger. He had used my love and my success as a stepping stone. He and Genevieve wanted a stable future. I would give them one, built on the unshakable foundation of their own lies. I downloaded the audio files. I opened my audio editing software. And then I pulled up my bank records. I took a screenshot of the $50,000 transfer and I ran it through a text-to-speech generator. Bank transaction. Date, October 12 th. Amount, $50,000 and 0 cents. From VANCE Design LLC to the Grand Oak Estate. Memo, wedding deposit. I layered the tracks, the loving voicemails, the cold, hard digital proof. I saved the file, labeling it simply, the reception playlist. With the plan in motion, a strange sense of calm settled over me. I had a deadline, I had a project. My grief had been channeled into schematics and sound pressure levels. I was back in my element. I even started taking on small client meetings again. My renovation at the Tanner building was the perfect cover story. I was the ambitious, unstable freelance designer, already pouring her energy into a new project. The confrontation I'd been bracing for happened, as it always does, when I least expected it. I was at a high-end kitchen supply store, picking out fixtures for an actual client. I was comparing 2 brushed gold faucets when I heard a voice that made my blood run cold. "Oh my God, Eliza." I turned, there they were, Liam and Genevieve. They were holding a scanner gun, they were registering for wedding gifts. My stomach churned. Genevieve's smile was a work of art, a masterpiece of condescending pity. "Eliza, darling, so good to see you. Up and about," she cooed, as if I'd been in mourning. "We're just, well, you know," she giggled and held up the scanner. Liam looked like he'd seen a ghost. He was paler than I'd ever seen him, his eyes darting between me and the exit. "Eliza, hi, how are you?" "I'm fine, Liam," I said, my voice surprisingly even. I turned my gaze to Genevieve. "Congratulations. I was so sorry to hear my wedding was canceled." Genevieve's smile faltered, her perfectly manicured hand tightening on the scanner. "Well, our wedding is just going to be perfect. We were so lucky Liam managed to save the deposit on that gorgeous venue. He's just so clever with finances." "He is," I agreed, nodding slowly. "A real wizard with other people's money." Liam's face flushed a dark, ugly red. "Eliza, not here." "Don't what, Liam?" I asked, matching Genevieve's sweet, saccharine tone. "Don't talk, you're right. We should all be more like you and just send a text." I'd found out later he'd broken up with his previous girlfriend via email. He'd upgraded to an in-person dumping for me, but only just. "Now listen," Genevieve said, stepping forward, her PR mode kicking in. She was clearly used to handling difficult situations. "There is no need for this hostility. We understand you're hurt, but these things happen. People outgrow each other. Liam just needed something more secure. We're building a real future." "A future," I repeated. "That's wonderful, and you're building it on shall we say, eriged foundation." Liam finally found his voice, and it was sharp. "What do you want, Eliza? Are you following us? You need to move on." "Move on, I have," I said with a bright, sudden smile that I knew didn't reach my eyes. "In fact, I'm moving on up. I just bought a building downtown. You know, using that unstable income you were so worried about. I'm converting it into my new studio." I saw the flicker of confusion, then calculation, in Liam's eyes. He knew my finances. He knew I didn't have buy a building money just lying around, unless I'd liquidated everything. "You bought a building?" he asked, his voice tight. The old Tanner building, over in the historic district." The color drained from Liam's face. Genevieve, oblivious, just looked bored. "The Tanner building?" Liam's voice was a whisper. He knew the district. He knew where the Grand Oak was. "Yes," I said, tapping the gold faucet thoughtfully. "It's right next to the Grand Oak, actually. You know, I was inside it the other day, and you won't believe the acoustics. They're dreadful." I leaned in, as if sharing a secret. "The walls are paper-thin. You can hear everything from the ballroom next door. Every word. Every single tiny sound." Genevieve's polished mask finally cracked. Her eyes widened, the implications finally dawning on her. What are you talking about?" "Just shop talk," I said, shrugging. I gave them both the brightest, falsest smile I could muster. "Anyway, so lovely to see you. I hope your wedding day is everything you deserve." I turned and walked away, not looking back. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. Liam knew. He didn't know what, but he knew I had a plan. And Genevieve, she just looked terrified. Their poorly executed lies, their smugness, it was all gone. They weren't just thieves. They were amateurs. And they were walking right into a trap they were too arrogant to see. The run-in at the store lit a fire under them. 2 days later, a crisp, white envelope arrived at my apartment, delivered by a courier. It was from a high-priced, downtown law firm. Inside was a cease and desist letter. My hands trembled as I read the legal jargon. It accused me of a pattern of harassment, stalking, and intentional infliction of emotional distress against Mr. Liam Turner and Ms. Genevieve Hart. It mentioned the confrontation at the kitchen store. And then, the real kicker. "Furthermore, we are aware of your recent, vexatious purchase of the commercial property at 114 West Elm Street, the Tanner Building. Given its proximity to our client's upcoming private event, any attempt to interfere, disrupt, or otherwise spy on said event will be met with the swiftest possible legal action, including, but not limited to, claims for damages and a temporary restraining order." They were scared. They were so scared. This letter wasn't an attack, it was a shield. A flimsy, paper-thin shield. They knew I had them, and they were trying to intimidate me into backing down. But the joke was on them. I wasn't harassing them. I hadn't contacted them. I hadn't slandered them. I was simply renovating my new property. A property I had every legal right to be in. The letter just made me more meticulous. My sound system was in place, but I needed to do a full volume test. I couldn't risk them hearing it, so I checked the Grand Oaks event schedule online. They had a massive corporate gala on a Thursday night, the perfect cover. That night, I sat in the darkness of the Tanner Building, my laptop glowing. I put on my reception playlist. I started the volume at 30%, then 50%, then 80%. The building thrummed, the air vibrated. The sound was so physically overwhelming, so clear and loud, it was like Liam was screaming in my face. But when I walked into the alleyway, there was only a dull, bassy hum. The sound was being piped directly through the brick. It was perfect. The next day, I got a frantic-sounding voicemail from Margaret, the Grand Oaks event coordinator. "Hi, Eliza. This is Margaret. A very strange thing happened at our event last night. We're not sure what it was, but there was a sound, like a voice coming from the walls. It was very disruptive. I know you did some consulting for us a few years back. I was wondering if you had any idea what." I called her back immediately, my voice dripping with professional concern. "Margaret, how awful. That sounds like a serious acoustic anomaly. It's probably the shared wall with the Tanner building. That building is a structural mess. You know, I just heard someone bought it. Probably some amateur developer doing a gut job. They've probably exposed beams, creating a resonance chamber. Oh, that's a huge liability for you. You should definitely warn all your upcoming clients about it." "Oh my goodness," she said, panicked. "You're right, we have a big wedding in a few weeks. I'll have to let them know the ballroom might be compromised." I hung up, a cold, satisfied smile on my face. Now, not only were Liam and Genevieve terrified of me, but their own venue coordinator was about to warn them that their wedding might be ruined by construction noise. Their stable day was suddenly looking very shaky. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place a week before their wedding. I was compiling my audio files, doing a final mix, when I saw a file I'd overlooked. It wasn't a voicemail, it was a video. It was from our engagement party almost a year ago. My sister had filmed it. It was Liam, standing on a chair, a glass of champagne in his hand, giving a speech. He was flushed, happy, and so in love. "And I know you all know this," he was saying, his voice thick with emotion, "but none of this would be possible without Eliza. She is the most brilliant, most driven, most incredible woman I have ever met. She just paid the entire deposit for the Grand Oak with her own money. I am the luckiest man in the world. To Eliza." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. This wasn't just a private voicemail. This was a public declaration. In front of 50 of our closest friends and family, many of whom I knew were also invited to this new wedding. I exported the audio. I added it to the playlist. The case wasn't just built. It was ironclad. The lawyer's letter, the venue's panic, their own arrogant attempts to silence me, it all just confirmed I had them. They were trapped, and they didn't even know where the walls were. The wedding day arrived. It was a perfect, crisp September afternoon, the kind of day photographers dream of. I, on the other hand, was dressed in all black, sitting on a stool in the cavernous, dark expanse of the Tanner building's second floor. I had my laptop, the high-fidelity soundboard, and a pair of binoculars. I was perched at one of the arched windows overlooking the 3-foot alleyway. Through the identical window on the other side, I had a perfect, unobstructed view of the Grand Oaks main reception hall. I watched the guests arrive. I saw my old college friends who had clearly been fed a one-sided story looking somber and awkward. I saw Liam's parents beaming with pride. And then I saw Genevieve's family. They were a lot. They looked like old money, all stiff spines and expensive, understated silk. They surveyed the room with an air of proprietary approval. This was a merger, not a marriage. The ceremony itself was held in the courtyard. I couldn't hear it, and I didn't care to. I waited. Around 5:30 p.m., the guests began to filter into the reception hall for the second part of the event: the vows, the dinner, and the reception. This was a detail I had planned. I'd wanted the drama of the soaring, gilded ceilings as we said our vows. How generous of Genevieve to agree. The string quartet played. The guests took their seats. Liam and Genevieve stood at the altar, which was bathed in the warm glow of 100 candles. Through the binoculars, I could see the sweat glistening on Liam's forehead. He kept glancing, almost imperceptibly, at the long, plaster wall to his left. My wall. The officiant spoke, his voice too low to hear, but I knew the script by heart. I waited. Then Liam took Genevieve's hands. He began to speak. I couldn't hear him, but I saw his lips move. I saw him smile, a tight, practiced smile. I saw Genevieve's eyes glitter. This was it. My hand went to the master volume fader. I took a deep breath, and I pressed play. For a split second, nothing. Then, the first audio file hit. It wasn't a whisper. It was a physical force. Liam's own voice, his happy, loving, Eliza-loving voice, erupted from the wall, amplified to the level of a rock concert. "I am the luckiest man in the world." His voice boomed, rattling the champagne flutes on the tables. The guests gasped, a collective, sharp intake of breath. The string quartet screeched to a halt. Genevieve's head snapped toward the wall, her face a mask of confusion. Liam froze, his skin a ghastly, waxy white. His voice continued, bouncing off the marble. "And I know you all know this, but none of this would be possible without Eliza. She just paid the entire deposit for the Grand Oak, with her own money, to Eliza." There was a wave of screaming. People were standing up, knocking over chairs. I saw Genevieve's father, a formidable-looking man, staring at Liam with a look of pure, murderous rage. Then the track changed. The giddy, loving Liam was gone. A new, more intimate voice filled the room. "Eliza, you're amazing, you did it. You got the Grand Oak. Thank you for paying for it, my love." "What is this?" Genevieve shrieked, her voice finally audible over the chaos. She was backing away from Liam. "What is he talking about? Pay for it." Liam was stammering, holding his hands up. "It's nothing, it's a trick, it's her." He pointed wildly at the solid, immovable plaster wall. The final track hit, the most brutal of all. The cold, clear, text-to-speech voice that cut through the human panic like a scalpel. "Bank transaction. Date, October 12 th. Amount, $50,000.00. From VANCE Design LLC to the Grand Oak Estate. Memo, wedding deposit." That was the kill shot. The room exploded. Genevieve's father marched up to the altar and got right in Liam's face, jabbing a finger at his chest. I saw my old college friends, their faces a perfect, beautiful mix of horror and dawning comprehension, pulling out their phones to record. Genevieve, her illusion of a stable future crumbling around her, let out a sound I will never forget, a high-pitched wail of pure, unfiltered rage. She grabbed the champagne flute from the officiant's table and hurled it at Liam. "You told me your parents paid for this," she screamed, the words clear as day. "You liar, you fraud." Liam just stood there, drenched in champagne, his reputation, his career, and his new life imploding in real time. From my dark, quiet perch next door, I watched the chaos unfold for another minute. I watched Genevieve's mother, horrified, trying to usher her screaming daughter out of the room. I watched Liam, alone at the altar, his face buried in his hands. And then, very calmly, I faded the volume down. I shut down the soundboard. I closed my laptop. I walked over to the windows, and one by one I closed them, shutting out the faint, remaining sounds of their panic. The show was over. I didn't stick around. I packed up my equipment, locked the Tanner building, and went home to my own, blessedly quiet apartment. I ran a bath, poured a glass of wine, and turned off my phone. For the first time in 3 months, I slept without dreaming. The fallout was, as my sister Kate gleefully described it, biblical. The wedding, of course, was over before the appetizers were served. Genevieve and her family had apparently left the Grand Oak immediately, leaving Liam alone to face a room full of bewildered and furious guests. The gossip spread like wildfire. My friends who had been there called me, one by one, to apologize. "Eliza, we had no idea," my old roommate, Sarah, said, her voice full of shame. "He told us you had a breakdown and that you'd graciously let him keep the venue as a kindness. Oh God, Eliza, that was incredible." But the real consequences were far more satisfying than social humiliation. Genevieve's father, it turned out, was not just old money. He was the head of a private equity firm and a man who did not suffer fools, especially fools who tried to marry into his family under false pretenses. About a week after the reception, I received a check in the mail. It was from Genevieve's father's law firm. It was for $50,000. The memo line simply read, reimbursement. He had paid me back my deposit, but he wasn't doing it out of kindness. He was doing it, as I later learned, as a prelude to his own lawsuit. He was suing Liam for fraud and for the entire cost of the disastrous wedding, the flowers, the food, the custom-made dress, all of it. Liam's life unraveled with astonishing speed. The financial firm he worked for, which built its entire reputation on trust and stability, fired him the moment the story went public, thanks to a few anonymous tips to local gossip blogs, courtesy of Kate. He was a financial advisor who had been publicly exposed for financial fraud against his own fiancée. He was untouchable. Genevieve, naturally, disappeared from his life. Their stable future was a catastrophic loss. As for me, my reconciliation wasn't with a person, it was with myself. I had taken my deepest wound, and using the very skills Liam and Genevieve had derided as unstable, I had turned it into a victory. I had reclaimed my money, my dignity, and my power. And my project was just getting started. The historic district was, as I'd gambled, in the middle of a massive resurgence. The city had just approved a new high-end condo development 3 blocks over. My vexatious purchase of the Tanner Building was suddenly the hottest commercial property on the market. I spent 6 months actually renovating it. I poured my heart into the design, turning the dusty warehouse into a stunning, light-filled creative loft space. The acoustic anomaly on the common wall was, of course, fixed with permanent, high-end, studio-grade soundproofing. I put the building on the market. It sold in a bidding war for nearly triple what I had paid for it. The following September, exactly 1 year after my wedding should have been, I was sitting on a sun-drenched terrace in Santorini, Greece. It was the honeymoon I had originally planned, the one I was supposed to be on with Liam. But I was alone, and I had never been happier. I raised my glass of wine to the sparkling Aegean Sea. I thought about Liam, probably drowning in legal fees, and Genevieve, probably already PR spinning her victim narrative for a new, stable prospect. I had lost a fiancé, but I had gained a real estate portfolio and an unshakable understanding of my own worth. I took a sip, deleted Liam's number from my phone for the last time, and turned my face to the sun. I was finally, completely and profitably at peace.